Welcome to What Just Happened. I'm Christine Russo. Today we have Head of Brand for Zoom, Whitney Magnuson. Welcome, Whitney.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
It's great to be here at such an interesting time in the spectrum of change that Zoom is going through. You're Head of Brand. I cannot wait to get into discussing your role as it relates to the technological advancement of Zoom. So welcome to What Just Happened.
Thanks so much. Thrilled to be here. Zoom is at such an interesting crossroads in its history right now, and I think it makes it a really exciting brand challenge to get to work on.
Let's start with your headspace. When you took the role, what was your first order of business and how has that evolved?
I'm about a year in at Zoom right now, and coming in, I knew that the big challenge is that we needed to reframe what Zoom meant in people's minds. During the pandemic, Zoom became entirely synonymous with video meetings, and we're really proud of that chapter and how Zoom was able to serve people in that chapter, and the awareness that resulted from it was incredible. But it also has now become a bit limiting because people still think of Zoom only as a video conferencing tool. And today what we're building is really much broader, right? We're working on creating an AI first work platform. And meetings are still incredibly important in that platform because they're where so many of the conversations that inform your work begin, but they're no longer where those conversations end, right? And so that's a fundamentally different company than one most people are used to thinking of Zoom. And not a lot of brands have been through that type of a transformation or a platformization. It's probably about 10 that you can list off that have gone through something like that. So my job is really to help people understand that shift, and everything that we're doing across the marketing organization right now is focused on that perception shift and introducing people to a brand new Zoom.
You've made acquisitions, you've added on technology. It's not quite as big of a pivot as Allbirds becoming a GPU company, but it's as big of a pivot. So that's really your lift. How do you tell that story?
I don't like to think of us as an infrastructure company. I think of us as a system of action. That's the category that we're playing in today. And what I mean by that is a system of action doesn't just store information or just help people communicate, but it's really about connecting those moments across your business and the context behind why certain actions are happening in order to move work forward. And that's really where Zoom is focused. But it all starts with the conversation, and that's our history and where meetings comes into it. But conversations can happen many places other than a meeting as well. They can happen on a sales call. They can happen in a contact center with a customer service interaction. They can happen completely offline in a coffee shop when you're having a great interaction IRL with someone. And those conversations, they all contain the decisions, the next steps, the intent that's going to propel business forward. And so a lot of Zoom's work over the past few years is to expand where we have grown in that conversation layer so that we have access to all of that really important context. The second kind of piece of that is then what do we do with that context? Because it used to be that you're rushing from meeting to meeting, and that context often gets lost. Either you forget about it, you forget your next steps and action items, or you have to go and manually enter it into some other system after the fact. And so our vision for Zoom's AI, our Zoom 8 workflows, is that we connect that context that happened in the conversation with the other systems that our customers already use, whether that's end-to-end in Zoom or in Salesforce, in ServiceNow, in Workday, even in Claude, hundreds of others. Wherever people are needing to drive their work outcomes, that's where Zoom wants to play. And that's where our AI layer is helping to drive those outcomes. So the meeting is still important because it's where a lot of those conversations are happening, but it's not the destination anymore. It's just the starting point. And so when we talk about bringing the idea of a system of action to life, it's really about how we showcase showcase those very real, intangible benefits to users of what it can mean when a system of action has automated a lot of those manual tasks that they used to be doing. For example, we just recently hosted a event in New York called Zoom Take Back Your Lunch. And the idea was, if you can use our AI work tools to automate those action items and next steps coming out of some of your meetings, you can find 30 minutes in your day so you're not sitting on a meeting eating a sad salad off camera. You can actually get out of the office, go explore, go take that time to meet up with a friend and have lunch again. We hosted a smash burger pop-up in the city. And that's just showcasing that very real, tangible example. It's not showcasing just AI workflows. It's showing benefit to people. And that's where we really want to lean in with how Zoom's tech has evolved.
Let's talk about the tools and the AI layers and the factory driving what this system of action is.
While we have expanded on that kind of horizontal workflow across our traditional kind of areas, we've also been building out line of business solutions. And so one of those is our solution for sellers, sales leaders, which is our Zoom Revenue Accelerator product. And it helps people, again, to be more efficient through AI coaching and things like that in that customer or prospect conversation. So again, right there adjacent to meetings where we started. But what we found is that so much of what is happening in that customer journey is now taking place before a prospect is ever willing to actually get in a call with the seller to begin with, right? Prospects are researching products, they're engaging in online communities, they're looking at comparison sites, they're reading things on your website and competitors' website. And all of that is happening before your seller ever gets to ask them those background questions to inform what they're going to show them. And so Common Room helps us to illuminate that earlier part of the journey so that when we can bring together the insights from Common Room and Zoom Revenue Accelerator to improve the conversation, you're giving sales teams really that full context that they actually need to close a deal. But again, it all connects into where Zoom started with improving conversations, making that connection in a conversation more valuable so that it can get you to the outcomes that you're desiring.
I feel really strongly about the phase that you mentioned, which is what are prospects doing before they get on the call? LLMs are highly influencing information now. And then of course you have even just chat rooms like Reddit, etc.
Yeah.
So you have formal, you have informal, and a lot of particularly startups actually think it's like you get the email, you get the dinner to demo pipeline without any real acknowledgement of outside influence. Telling your friends, how's it going for you? Certainly earned media where someone else is telling your story. And so would the product that you're building for go-to-market sales encompass all of that information?
I think that's a real gap that people are facing right now. We call it the dark funnel, right? And I think it's this acknowledgement that people are a lot more than their title, right? So often, especially in B2B, people have just been treated as their title, as the buyer, as the buying group. But an IT decision maker still has friends that are not IT decision makers. They have a spouse that probably is not an IT decision maker. And so all of those inputs have always been around them. But I think a lot of B2B companies are now looking at how do we actually really broaden our buying groups and speak to all of those that influence how our brand is perceived, how our product is perceived, to ultimately make it easier for the end decision maker to say yes. And I think it's similar in that Common Room acquisition that we want to give sellers more information to make it easier for those prospects in those conversations to get to yes.
So you mentioned that the information can be pulled from different data sources.
So our federated AI approach, essentially.
Okay, so let's dig into that. Tell me when that started, when you found that to be a necessary piece of the offering and how it's evolved.
Zoom's approach to AI is a federated AI system, which means that we're not just using any one proprietary model, but we're actually working with partners across all of the largest models and stitching those responses together, cross-checking references against each other so that we can ensure that our customers are able to actually get the fastest and best response to whatever they're trying to do. So depending on the task, our Zoom 8 tool, it might use Zoom's own small language models, but it might also leverage kind of leading foundation models from OpenAI or Anthropic or NVIDIA. And the rationale there is that so many of our enterprise partners are really going through this journey too. There's not necessarily one clear model or one clear leader who was the leader right now could be behind in 3 months because this space is moving so fast. And so we wanted to make sure that we were not locking our customers into any one model when their businesses are rapidly evolving right now. And so by using a federated model, we're able to make sure that they are getting the absolute most accurate, most secure results possible, and we can keep iterating that as the market continues to change.
I want to pick up on the word secure because I do know that the financial community uses Zoom because every single conversation and everything needs to be stored securely. And Zoom has been a choice of financial, whether it's wealth management or investment bankers or advisory. Speak to that community and how they have really leaned into Zoom as a resource.
Security is a big piece of why a lot of enterprise brands still choose Zoom, and especially in a market where things are very rapidly shifting, you need to make sure that you have a partner that is validating all of kind of the inputs, where data is being stored, how it's being maintained, all of those things. So Zoom actually has a number of different offerings that speak to specific regulated industries. We have some for finance, we have many for healthcare, we have a Zoom for defense, for example. So all of those speak to the different regulations happening in those regulated industries, because at the end of the day, what we want is for Zoom to just work. Right? And it has to work the way the customer works, regardless of what kind of environment that is. And so if they are in a highly regulated environment, then we'll try and make sure that we are able to accommodate that. It's actually one of the things I was most impressed with when I first joined Zoom is that the voice of the customer is so strong at this company. Every single person within Zoom on their first day is added to a company chat channel called Social Voice of the Customer, where literally anytime a customer complains about something, suggests a feature request, has a problem, it's getting shared out to everyone in the company, including all the way up to our CEO, Eric. And it's not uncommon for Eric actually to jump on to even a social media post and say, hey, we're going to take care of this for you. And I think that speaks to how just customer obsessed Eric has always been. And that permeates through the entire culture and is why we care about building those industry-specific, vertical-specific solutions for our customers.
You're 1 year in, it's your 1 year Zoom anniversary. You're working for a highly respected CMO, recently acknowledged as one of the Forbes leading CMOs. You've got creativity in your purview, and of course, awareness and driving business.
We're just coming off our largest brand campaign effort ever. That was our Zoom Ahead campaign, launched at the very end of December of last year, where we worked with No Notes, which is helmed by Colin Jost of SNL, to create our new commercial that starred Bo and Yang. And that was really Zoom's first ever push into kind of linear TV on that scale. And I think that's a great example of bringing both humanity, heart, and product truth all together to tell that story much broader to a kind of broad reach audience rather than just a specific end buyer. So everything we've been talking about, that's what went into the strategy there. We've also had numerous moments where we've leaned in with creators. We've leaned in with experiential events. We've been showing up at cultural moments. So Zoom was just at Cannes for the first time. So it's been really interesting getting to take Zoom out of maybe that traditional B2B model and say, hey, we're a brand that's already in culture. we're a verb. And so to shift what that verb means in culture, we need to be in the culture. We need to show up in those moments. The most successful brands right now, they're not the ones shouting from a megaphone about themselves, but they're allowing and inviting others to have those conversations with and about them, and then reacting in real time. And that's where you start to see things actually take place in culture. So we've been really inspired by brands like DoorDash, brands like Canva, which started more on the consumer side, now moving more into B2B, even a lot of the beauty brands for how they have been really activating their communities and their fan bases. And so that's where we're drawing inspiration. And I think it was a successful first year for us, and expect Zoom to show up at more events like that across the next year.
You've got all the right levers that you're pulling, and also the ones that are a little bit controversial, to be honest with you. They're not performance-based. Let's chat about that a little bit.
Yeah.
You have a lot of freedom to just say, this is good for us.
Whenever people ask for my advice to marketers, it's always learn the finance side of the business, become best friends with your CFO, know your finance team, take them out to dinner, figure out what's on their minds, because at the end of the day, you have to justify your spend. And for B2B, it's especially difficult because I think B2B got addicted a little bit to that last touch attribution. And that really led B2B down a certain path that I think they over-indexed on as an industry. And now you're starting to see a correction from that. But all of those, the way that you're able to correct that is by educating other folks within your organization about all of the other kind of impacts that we know from industry research, from peers in the industry, does in fact lead to better revenue performance, better demand efficiency, better consideration, faster deal cycles, bigger deal values. All of those things are the same things that the teams want to drive. They just need education on how to get there. And so we start with our friends in finance, making sure that they're bought in and they're able to help us go and pitch those cases for why we're going to go with a large brand campaign, why we're going to go to Cannes, why we're going to go do experiential marketing. Because when you can have that partnership between CMO and CFO telling the story, it's, I think, a lot more palatable for folks that don't always have that comfort level than if it's just some crazy unhinged marketing idea, right?
So whether it's an actual change in the organization, the team, or doing what you're recommending, I really want to double down on this for the listeners and the kids in the back of the class, really taking the time to educate the money side on why in a less transactional way, but in a broader sense, but also in a financial sense, that you can speak to the money, that you can speak the language that they hear, the way that they want to hear it, and build a trust. Look, with everything, it's about building trust, even within organizations, within, outside, all of it. So I think that they want to know that the money is in good hands with the best intent and the right roadmap.
Absolutely. And it's still, even then, it's not free reign, I would say. We are constantly reevaluating how are we going to prove out the effects of this? What are the KPIs that we're measuring? Do we have the right model in place? And those are ongoing conversations. And so I think I have yet to hear from a marketing leader or a brand leader that feels like, man, I've nailed it. I've got it. I don't need to do any more work in this area. So I think we just continue to push forward as much as we can and take those incremental steps forward to drive that culture shift so that we can do what we as marketing leaders know is going to be most effective.
Let's talk a little bit about your background, because you're very good at that because you come from a diverse background. I'd like to share with people who maybe are in one area of work who are thinking, I want to make a switch and don't know how or don't even know it's possible. So let's touch on your background, because you didn't start.
It's a weird one.
It's a weird one.
I started my career in PR, and this was many decades ago now. And I was a very broke girl living in LA. And my parents said, if you don't want to be broke forever, you better go to law school. Followed the parents' advice and went to law school. And so I actually am a lawyer, finished law school, took the bar, did all the things. But as I started practicing law, I really found that it was maybe not the creative outlet that I was hoping it would be. It was a lot of repetition. It was, especially as a baby lawyer, you're just doing discovery review, just a lot of paperwork, right? And so I was looking for a creative outlet. And one of the things that my friends and I did on the regular was we went to karaoke. And so as a side kind of business, while I was still just starting out my legal career, I actually founded my own business, which was the National Karaoke League. So kind of lawyer to then entrepreneur. And after a couple of years, that business was successful enough, had grown and expanded into enough different divisions, new members, I made the decision to jump out of law and do that full time. And after a few more years of that, had an acquisition offer came in. I was actually able to pivot again, sell my stake in that company. And I was looking around going, what do I do next? Do I go back to law? Do I want to try and start a different company? And I got a phone call from Google. And so that's kind of what propelled me into my first tech company, was that Google was looking for a community manager, someone that had built up a loyal community in a specific location. And so I became the first ever local community manager for Google, tied to their Google Maps product, building what has now become their Google Local Guides program that is part of Google Maps. And so that's really what started my journey into tech marketing. Did tech marketing for about 10 years, started to look around a little bit, and then had an amazing opportunity to jump industries, move over to Hilton. So I led social globally at Hilton for a couple years through actually 2020 and the pandemic. That was crazy. Went from this huge worldwide team to everyone being furloughed, having to completely scrap our annual plans, really reshift our focus on mission, budget slashed, all of that. And then coming out of that pandemic period, I was looking around for something maybe a little more stable feeling than the travel industry at that point. And so I jumped into finance and insurance and went to Northwestern Mutual for about 4.5 years, where I led social, I led creator, I led partnerships, a wide mix of different brand initiatives there, before ultimately jumping over to Zoom for my current role. And so I have made a lot of pivots, but it's funny that when you're making those decisions, at least for me, they don't seem like huge shifts. They seem like, yeah, I've done this and this is just building on those skills, right? And so I think it sounds maybe more dramatic on paper than it did at the time, but it was just continuing to diversify your skill set, learn new things, stay curious. And that tended to lead me down these different paths that ultimately has resulted in my career today.
Yeah, I was going to ask you for the advice for people. And so you're saying stay curious. I absolutely live by that. Anything else?
I believe that humans tend to mimic really well. You see it in babies, right? They start to mimic their parents from day one. And so, especially today, when so much is being outsourced to AI, I think if you're trying to stay creative, keep those wild, innovative ideas in your mind, you have to make sure that you are intaking things that can inspire you, that can inspire you to mimic great work. So big believer in go see a film in a theater without your phone, right? Read a book, a hard copy book, just spend a whole day doing nothing else. All of those kind of touch grass, but for the arts type things, that would be a recommendation too. And I think it goes hand in hand with staying curious, but stay curious and feed your inspiration.
We're going to wrap it up there, Whitney. Thank you so much. Very interesting to learn about the place where Zoom is now, your role in telling that story, where it's headed, and your own personal journey.
Thank you so much, Christine.
Thanks for coming on What Just Happened.